The Golden Child Shadow. A woman struggles with years of parental favoritism until her sister's betrayal pushes her to finally take control of her life. I used to think there was something wrong with me. Maybe it was the way I chewed too loud, or how I'd cry too easily over cartoons. But whatever it was, my mother didn't like it. Not the way she liked Charlotte. Charlotte was 2 years younger, but always stood in the front of every family photo. Chin up, teeth gleaming, hands posed like she belonged on the cover of some glossy magazine. And maybe she did. People used to say she looked like a young Grace Kelly. Blonde hair, white eyes, a voice that sounded like sugar poured over warm tea. I, on the other hand, was the utility child. The one who made straight A's and set the table without being asked. Who got overlooked until someone needed something fixed or explained or fetched. My name was Clara, but in our house, I was more often called Can You or Go Get. My 14th birthday was when I knew, deep down, that I was a shadow. Mom forgot the cake. Dad was out golfing. Charlotte got me a candle, one, just one, and said, "You should feel lucky. I made time for this." Then she went out with friends to the mall and posted photos of herself with a caption that read, "With my favorite sister," standing next to some blonde classmate named Tasha. That night, as I sat in my room with a spoon and a jar of peanut butter, I decided I was done crying. At least for a while. I'd collect my sadness like coins in a jar, spend them when I was strong enough. I worked harder, got into the top high school in our county, won debates, got scholarships. Still, every Christmas morning, Charlotte would get new earrings, concert tickets, and makeup kits. I'd get socks. Or worse, money for books. By the time I turned 24, I was living in a tiny apartment in the city, working as a legal assistant and paying off student loans. Charlotte, meanwhile, had just announced her engagement to some finance guy named Logan. There was a party, of course, at the country club, champagne tower, a string quartet, and our mother crying like the queen had knighted her. No one asked if I was seeing anyone. That night, I left early. I walked 3 miles home in heels that blistered my feet. When I got back, I took them off, made tea, and looked out my window. I told myself I was content, that I liked my quiet life. But something inside me was fraying, and it would snap, just a year later, the night Charlotte betrayed me in a way no sister ever should. Charlotte called me on a Thursday evening. I still remember the sky, purple and bleeding into black. I was microwaving leftover pasta when the phone lit up with her name. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something in me still clung to hope. "Clara," she chirped, "you busy this weekend?" I paused. "Why?" She hummed like she was thumbing through her calendar. "Logan and I are hosting a little thing. Just a few people. You should come." I said yes, even though I knew better. I always said yes. Saturday came, and I showed up in a modest dress and boots I'd worn to 3 job interviews. The second I stepped inside, I knew I didn't belong. Everyone was polished, laughing in corners, clutching wine glasses like they were born with them. The air smelled like lavender and money. Charlotte greeted me with a side hug, already 2 drinks in. "You look cozy," she said, eyes skimming my outfit. I smiled tightly and nodded. "Thanks." An hour passed. I nursed a ginger ale. I talked to a woman who thought my name was Carla. I found a corner by a bookshelf and started counting down the minutes until I could leave without it being rude. That's when I saw Logan. And Megan. Megan was my friend. My only real friend in the city. We'd met at work, ate lunch together every Thursday, laughed about awkward dates, and swapped Netflix passwords. Megan knew everything. About my family. About Charlotte. About how invisible I often felt. And there she was, pressed up against Logan on the balcony, his hand on her waist, their faces way too close. My blood turned to ice. I pushed through the crowd, nearly knocking over a vase. Charlotte caught my arm halfway through the living room. "Clara," she said, her grip like iron. "Don't make a scene." I stared at her. "You knew?" She didn't flinch. "He was going to break it off with you anyway." That's when the world tilted. "You set us up," I whispered. "You introduced us. Megan and I, she was my friend. And you." Charlotte's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Clara, you always make everything dramatic. You think the world owes you something because you got good grades and no one noticed? Grow up." People were watching now. Someone laughed nervously. Logan glanced over, but didn't move. Megan avoided my eyes. I left. Didn't grab my coat. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked out into the cold night, bare arms trembling, and kept walking until I couldn't feel my fingers. And somewhere in that frostbitten silence, something shifted. I wasn't going to be the shadow anymore. After that night, something inside me went cold. Not angry, not vengeful, just done. I didn't answer Charlotte's texts. Not the "you overreacted" one. Not the "let's talk" one. Not the long-winded apology that wasn't really an apology, full of phrases like, "it's complicated," and "you always take things so personally." I didn't reply to Megan either. She left a voicemail, crying. Said she didn't know Logan and I were serious. That Charlotte told her we were barely even dating. I deleted it without listening to the end. I didn't have the energy for betrayal in stereo. Instead, I went to work, ate frozen meals, took long walks after dark. I unfollowed everyone I knew on social media, bought a secondhand punching bag and hung it in my tiny living room. It swayed gently at night, like it was waiting for me to swing. A week passed, then another. The silence from my family was louder than a siren. Then Mom called. "Clara," she said, voice dripping with that syrupy condescension she'd perfected over decades. "Charlotte told me you made a scene at her party. I thought you'd grown out of that kind of behavior." I didn't say anything. Just let her talk. She's under a lot of pressure with the wedding. You know how delicate she is. Delicate. That word sat on my tongue like a shard of glass. "Did she tell you what she did?" I finally asked. She told me her side. Mom said carefully. "And honestly, Clara, you've always been so sensitive. Maybe you misread something." "I saw them," I said. "Together. Kissing." Silence. Then, "Well, it's not like you two were married. Maybe it wasn't meant to be." That's when I laughed. It came out dry, hollow, like a sound I didn't recognize. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, and hung up before she could twist the knife further. The next morning, I took a long look in the mirror. My eyes were dull, my shoulders hunched. I looked like a woman who'd spent her whole life trying to shrink into corners. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to disappear. Not anymore. I started with the closet. Pulled every thread of the old me from the hangers. Soft cardigans, neutral blouses, hand-me-downs that still smelled like other people's choices. Then I went shopping. Not for anything flashy. Just strong lines. Darker colors. Things that didn't whisper but spoke in full sentences. A blazer that made me stand straighter. Boots with weight in their heels. Lipstick the color of dry blood. It wasn't about vanity. It was about armor. Then I went after my mind. I enrolled in a weekend course in negotiation tactics. Signed up for a self-defense class at the Y. Found a therapist named Rosa who looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't owe anyone your silence." It felt like setting 100 tiny fires in a long frozen room. Then came the wedding invitation. Cream envelope. Gold script. A photo of Charlotte and Logan holding hands like they hadn't ground my heart into powder. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took a pen and scribbled across the RSVP, respectfully declining. "I don't celebrate betrayal," and mailed it back that afternoon. 2 days later, Charlotte called. "Clara," she started, voice sweet with that poisoned honey. "What is wrong with you?" I didn't flinch. "Nothing. You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. Mom said you're being petty. You slept with someone I was seeing. And told my best friend it was fair game. Logan and Megan are happy now. You don't want to ruin that, do you?" "I'm not ruining anything," I said, my voice steady for once. "I'm just done pretending any of you didn't treat me like a spare part." There was a pause. Then Charlotte laughed. "God, you've always been so dramatic." I smiled. "Then let me give you a show." And I hung up. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and made a list. Not of revenge, but of everything I was going to take back. My time, my voice, my life. Starting with the thing they all thought I'd never do. I was going to start my own business. Something for me. Something I didn't have to apologize for. The shadow was stepping into the sun. I started the business with a $4,000 savings account and a rented desk and a shared workspace that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. It was nothing at first, just me, a laptop, and a vision. I called it ClearPath Consulting. The name was no accident. Every day I showed up before dawn, answering emails, cold calling clients, researching markets until my eyes went blurry. I specialized in organizational strategy, helping small businesses clean up their messes, streamline operations, and stop bleeding money. In other words, I helped people fix what others had broken. Funny how life works. Within 6 months, I had 3 clients on retainer. Within a year, I was making more than I ever had in my legal job. I hired a part-time assistant, got my own little office, A door with my name on it. Not Charlotte's sister. Not the spare. Just Clara. I didn't tell my family. Not at first. But word got around. One of Mom's book club friends hired me to help her boutique out of a debt spiral, and I turned things around in 3 months. She wrote a glowing testimonial. Next thing I knew, Mom was calling again. Clara, she said, voice saccharine, I heard you're doing well. I let the silence stretch. I'd love to grab lunch sometime. Just you and me. Maybe we could talk things out. I stared out the window of my office at the city street below. Watch people rush by with lives of their own. No, I said simply. She stammered. No, I don't need closure. I needed a mother. You made your choice. And I hung up. That night, I cried. Not out of sadness. Out of release. It was like letting go of a weight I'd carried since childhood. The desperate need to be chosen. I didn't need to be chosen anymore. I was choosing myself. The next morning, Charlotte's name showed up in my inbox. Subject line, help. She needed a consultant. Her husband, Logan, had tanked their startup with a bad investment. They were hemorrhaging cash. Her business reputation was on the line. She wanted me to save it. I sat back in my chair and let out a slow, quiet laugh. The golden child. Reaching out. To her shadow. I didn't reply to Charlotte's email right away. I stared at it for a full hour, sipping tea, watching the steam rise and curl like a question mark. Then I opened a fresh document and typed out 3 words. My hourly rate. I didn't pad it. I didn't discount it. I charged what I would charge any desperate client who needed me to dig them out of a hole of their own making. 2 hours later, she replied. Fine. When can we start? That's how I found myself, a week later, sitting across from her and Logan in a glass conference room that smelled like stress and old cologne. She wore a beige power suit that didn't quite fit right. Logan avoided eye contact the entire time. Their startup, a subscription-based lifestyle box, was bleeding money. Too many free promos. Too little quality control. And Logan had sunk 50 grand into a celebrity partnership that turned out to be a scam. They were circling the drain. I laid out the facts, crisp and cold. We need to cut half your vendors. Kill the influencer budget. Automate fulfillment. And Logan, I paused, locking eyes with him. You're out of marketing. Charlotte blinked. You're firing him? I nodded. If you want the company to survive, yes. He stays out of the business side. You handle the decisions from now on. She glanced at Logan. He shrugged, like this was beneath him anyway. I worked with them for 2 months. Charlotte showed up late to every meeting, argued over every change, tried to push blame onto everyone but herself. Still, I fixed it. The business didn't thrive, but it stabilized. Payroll was covered. Orders shipped on time. Customer service complaints dropped by 80%. When I handed her the final report, I expected a polite thank you. Instead, she said, you're colder than I remember. I smiled. No, I said, I'm just done being soft for people who sharpen knives behind my back. I left without shaking hands. That night, she sent me one more email. Just one line. I wish I'd known you had this in you. I didn't reply. Let her sit with it. Let her wonder how much more I had, that they never got to see. After the contract ended, Charlotte vanished from my inbox. No thank you. No follow-up. No check-in. It was like we'd never spoken. Like the years of silence before had been stretched back over us, snug and suffocating. And yet, something shifted. People started reaching out. Old classmates. A few distant cousins. Even an aunt who used to pretend I didn't exist at family barbecues. I heard you helped Charlotte. I heard your business is doing well. I always knew you had it in you. Funny how people rewrite history once they see a balance sheet with commas in the right places. I smiled politely, declined lunch invites, stayed focused. But one night, around 2 a.m., I woke up in a cold sweat. My mind spinning with fragments of things I thought I'd buried. The birthday with no cake, the scholarship my mother sneered at, the Thanksgiving where Charlotte called me a stuck-up cow in front of her kids, and no one said a word. I got out of bed and went to the mirror. Stared hard at my reflection. Same face. Different eyes. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was haunted. Because even after everything, the success, the growth, the boundaries, part of me still wanted to be loved by them. That was the poison I hadn't fully purged. The idea that maybe, one day, they'd see me. Truly see me. And say the words I used to whisper to myself at night. You're enough. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote Charlotte a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter, with ink and paper and the weight of years between every line. I told her everything, from the birthday candle to the stolen boyfriend. From the day I stopped believing I deserved love to the moment I decided I did anyway. No begging, no guilt, just truth. I mailed it the next morning. No return address. And let the ghost of our childhood go. 2 weeks after I mailed the letter, I got a knock at my door. Not a text, not a call, a knock. It was a Sunday morning. I was still in my robe, coffee half drunk, a stack of invoices open on the table. When I opened the door, Charlotte stood there. Alone. No makeup. No camera-ready smile. No signature code or matching bag. Just jeans, sneakers, and a face that looked like it hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice low. I stood there for a moment. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I needed her to feel what it was like to be on the threshold, waiting for someone else's yes. Then I stepped aside. She didn't sit, just paced my small living room, eyes darting to my bookshelf, the little framed photo of me and my assistant at a conference, the window that looked out over the city. "This place is nice," she said. I didn't reply. She exhaled. "I got your letter." I nodded. Another silence. She cracked her knuckles, a nervous habit I'd forgotten she had. Then she looked at me and said something I'd never heard fall from her lips in 28 years. "I'm sorry. Not I'm sorry if. Not, I was going through a lot." Just those 2 words. I didn't move. Just let the silence hold her accountable. "I read it twice," she continued. "And I don't know what to say, Clara. I don't even recognize the person I was back then. I was selfish, cruel even. I saw how Mom treated us, and I let it happen because it benefited me. I liked being the favorite. It made me feel powerful." Her voice cracked. "But I didn't realize how much it cost you." That's when I finally spoke. "It didn't cost me," I said quietly. "You didn't break me, Charlotte. You taught me to build something no one could take from me, including you." She wiped at her eyes. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I needed you to know that I see it now. All of it." She took a step forward, then stopped. "If you ever want to start again, as adults, not sisters, I'd like that." I didn't answer right away, but I didn't slam the door either. When she left, the room felt heavier, but lighter, somehow. Like a storm had passed, and all that was left was cleanup and calm. That night, I stood by my window, watching the city lights flicker, and I whispered to myself, "You are no one's shadow." Not anymore. The days after Charlotte's visit were quieter. Not the empty kind of quiet I used to know. The kind that echoed through childhood bedrooms and left you wondering if anyone remembered you were alive. This was different. This was peace. I didn't rush to call her. She didn't push. We'd opened a door, not leapt through it. And that was fine by me. Some bridges need time to hold weight again. Instead, I poured myself into the business. Hired a second consultant. Launched a podcast. Nothing fancy. Just honest conversations about boundaries, growth, and surviving the families that were supposed to protect us. I called it The Clear Path. Fitting. The first episode went viral. I didn't expect it. Didn't promote it. Just spoke into a mic one night about the pain of being invisible and the power of choosing yourself anyway. Thousands listened. Hundreds wrote in. Stories from strangers who'd been scapegoats, second choices, shadows. People who said they'd never heard someone describe it out loud. Who said my words made them feel seen. It hit me then. This story wasn't just mine. It was ours. All the girls who were told to make room. All the boys expected to stay quiet. All the ones who never got the bigger slice of cake, or any slice at all. And then, one afternoon, as I wrapped up an interview with a woman who'd broken off an engagement with her golden fiancé's brother, I got an email. From Dad. It had no subject line. Just a single sentence. "I listened to your podcast. I didn't know it was that bad." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. He'd said nothing for decades. And now, he said almost nothing again. And it wasn't enough. So I didn't write back. I closed the laptop, took a long walk, bought myself flowers from a street vendor, and carried them home like they weighed nothing. Because they didn't. Not compared to everything I'd already carried. The first time I saw Charlotte again after that visit was at our cousin Ava's wedding. I hadn't planned to go. Ava and I weren't close, just Facebook birthday wishes and a polite nod at funerals. But she'd been kind to me when we were kids, the only cousin who asked if I was okay when I sat alone during Thanksgiving. So I said yes. I wore a navy dress that hugged me like confidence. No date. No need. Charlotte was already there when I arrived. She looked ordinary. Not because she wasn't beautiful. She always had been. But because the spotlight wasn't chasing her this time. She blended in, sat near the back, talked to people without performing. When she saw me, she didn't wave. She walked over. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, you look good. So do you." We stood there for a second, the wedding music swelling around us, neither of us sure what came next. Then she said, "I brought something. For you." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. No envelope, just creases and ink. "It's not for public reading," she said, "but I figured I owed you the real version." I took it, but didn't open it. She smiled. "You don't have to read it now, or ever." We sat together during the ceremony. Not close, but not far. Just enough. Later, at the reception, I danced. Not like a celebration. More like a release. Like each step was a goodbye to something I'd carried for too long. Back home that night, I opened the paper. It was a letter. Handwritten. Messy but raw. She wrote about growing up feeling like beauty was the only thing she had to offer. About how being the golden child had felt like being in a cage made of compliments. How she envied my strength. How she never realized it came from having to survive everything alone. She ended it with one line that stayed with me long after I folded the paper back up. "You were never in my shadow, Clara. I was just afraid of yours." That night, I didn't cry. I just slept. Deep, still, and whole. Life didn't change overnight. Charlotte and I didn't start texting daily or swapping holiday recipes. We didn't fall into some neat, tidy version of sisterhood that made up for the years we'd lost. But we started something. Slow. Real. On my terms. Once a month, we met for coffee. No family drama. No guilt. Just two women trying to figure out who they were outside the roles they'd been assigned. She'd talk about the things she was unlearning, the reflex to compete, the urge to control, the fear of not being adored. I'd talk about letting people in without letting them take. One morning, she told me she'd started therapy. "I don't want to be that person anymore," she said. "The one who needs to be loved to feel valuable." I smiled. "Takes one to know one." She laughed. "A real one." And for the first time, I saw her, not as the girl who stole my light, but as a woman carrying her own wounds, different from mine, but just as deep. Mom never came around. She sent a Christmas card that year. No apology. "Just thinking of you" in scripted font and a photo of her dog in a Santa hat. I threw it out without flinching. Dad sent another email, longer this time. He mentioned retirement. A bad knee. Asked if I wanted to meet for lunch. I didn't respond. I'd made peace with the idea that some people only want access to your life, not a relationship inside it. And that was okay. Because the people who mattered, they were already showing up. My assistant, who brought donuts every Monday without fail. A new friend I met through the podcast, who invited me to her daughter's recital like I was already family. And Charlotte, who, slowly but surely, was becoming not just my sister, but my equal. It was a small panel event, tucked into the back room of an indie bookstore. Nothing fancy. Just a circle of folding chairs, a chip pitcher of water, and a microphone that buzzed if you breathed wrong. But every seat was filled. People had come to hear me talk about boundaries, family estrangement, the quiet courage it takes to rebuild yourself when no one ever helped with the foundation. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, heart steady. I used to think healing meant going back. I told them. Back to the people who broke me. Back to the versions of myself they accepted. But I've learned that healing isn't always a loop. Sometimes, it's a path forward, one you build with your own hands, one step at a time. There were nods, quiet tears, a long silence afterward that felt like reverence. And then applause. After the event, as I signed a few books and hugged strangers who whispered thank you like it cost them something, I looked up and saw her. Charlotte. Standing by the door, arms folded, not smiling, just present. When I walked over, she held out a tote bag. "It's nothing big," she said. "Just something I found at a market last week. Made me think of you." I opened it. Inside was a candle. Handmade. Labeled Shadow and Flame. The scent was subtle, smoke, citrus, and something that smelled like late-night walks and second chances. "It's beautiful," I said. She nodded. "Thought you might like it." Thought. Maybe it was time to stop pretending we didn't come from fire. We stood there a long time. Two women. Not bound by the past, but built by it. Not sisters by obligation, but by choice. Later that night, I lit the candle. Watched the flame flicker in the quiet. And for the first time, the shadow didn't scare me. Because it wasn't about who had the light. It was about how we used it. And I had learned to burn without ever needing permission to glow.